In 1633, the Roman Catholic Church condemned Galileo for teaching that the Earth goes around the sun. Let's take a closer look at this famous controversy. In the preface to his book comparing the two hypotheses, an Earth-centered and a sun-centered universe, Galileo had written these words: "The celestial phenomena will be examined, strengthening the Copernican hypothesis until it might seem that this must triumph absolutely." And later in the book he confessed, "Nor can I ever sufficiently admire Copernicus and his followers. They have, through sheer force of intellect, done such violence to their own senses as to prefer what reason told them over what sensible experience plainly showed them." The Church declared, in its indictment of Galileo, "The doctrine that the Earth is neither the center of the universe nor immovable, but moves even with a daily rotation, is absurd, and both psychologically and theologically false, and at the least an error of faith." Galileo replied, "The doctrine of the movements of the Earth and the fixity of the sun is condemned on the ground that the Scriptures speak in many places of the sun moving and the Earth standing still. It is piously spoken that the Scriptures cannot lie, but none will deny that they are frequently abstruse and their true meaning difficult to discover, and more than the bare words signify. I think that in the discussion of natural problems, we ought to begin not with the Scriptures, but with experiments and demonstrations." But in his recantation, on June 22, 1633, Galileo was made to say these words: "Having been admonished by the Holy Office entirely to abandon the false opinion that the sun was the center of the universe and immovable, and that the Earth was not the center of the same, and that it moved, I have been suspected of heresy, that is, of having held and believed that the sun is the center of the universe and immovable, and that the Earth is not the center of the same, and that it does move. I abjure with a sincere heart and unfeigned faith, I curse and detest the same errors and heresies, and generally all and every error and sect contrary to the Holy Catholic Church." It took the Church until 1832 to remove Galileo's work from its list of books which Catholics were forbidden to read at the risk of dire punishment of their immortal souls. Pontifical disquiet with modern science has ebbed and flowed since the time of Galileo. The high water mark in recent history is the 1864 Syllabus of Errors of Pius IX, the Pope who also convened the Vatican Council, at which the doctrine of papal infallibility was, at his insistence, first proclaimed. Here are a few excerpts from the Syllabus of Errors. "Divine revelation is perfect, and therefore it is not subject to continual and indefinite progress in order to correspond with the progress of human reason. No man is free to embrace and profess that religion which he believes to be true, guided by the light of reason. The Church has power to define dogmatically the religion of the Catholic Church to be the only true religion. It is necessary even in the present day that the Catholic religion shall be held as the only religion of the state, to the exclusion of all other forms of worship. The civil liberty of every mode of worship, and full power given to all of openly and publicly manifesting their opinions and their ideas, conduce more easily to corrupt the morals and minds of the people. The Roman Pontiff cannot and ought not to reconcile himself or agree with progress, liberalism, and modern civilization." And so on. To its credit, although belatedly and reluctantly, the Church in 1992 repudiated its denunciation of Galileo. It still cannot quite bring itself, though, to see the significance of its opposition. In a 1992 speech, Pope John Paul II argued as follows: "From the beginning of the Age of Enlightenment," he said, "down to our own day, the Galileo case has been a sort of myth, in which the image fabricated out of the events is quite far removed from reality. In this perspective, The Galileo case was a symbol of the Catholic Church's supposed rejection of scientific progress, or of dogmatic obscurantism opposed to the free search for truth." Close quote. But surely the Holy Inquisition, ushering the elderly and infirm Galileo in to inspect the instruments of torture in the dungeons of the Church, not only admits, but requires just such an interpretation. This was not mere scientific caution and restraint, a reluctance to shift the paradigm until compelling evidence, such as the annual parallax, was available. This was fear of discussion and debate, censoring alternative views and threatening to torture their proponents, betray a lack of faith in the very doctrine and parishioners that are ostensibly being protected. Why were threats and Galileo's house arrest needed? Cannot truth defend itself in its confrontation with error? The Pope does, though, go on to add, quote, "The error of the theologians of the time, when they maintained the centrality of the earth, was to think that our understanding of the physical world structure was in some way imposed by the literal sense of sacred scriptures." Close quote. Here, indeed, considerable progress has been made, although proponents of fundamentalist faiths will be distressed to hear from the pontiff that sacred scripture is not always literally true. But if the Bible is not everywhere literally true, which parts are divinely inspired and which are merely fallible and human? As soon as we admit that there are scriptural mistakes or concessions to the ignorance of the times, then how can the Bible be an inerrant guide to ethics and morals? Might sects and individuals now accept as authentic the parts of the Bible they like, and reject those that are inconvenient or burdensome? Prohibitions against murder, say, are essential for a society to function. But if divine retribution for murder is considered implausible, won't more people think they can get away with it? Many felt that Copernicus and Galileo were up to no good, and erosive of the social order. Indeed, any challenge from any source to the literal truth of the Bible might have such consequences. We can readily see how science began to make people nervous. Instead of criticizing those who perpetuated the myths, public rancor was directed at those who discredited them.